everyone. Well, it's January. Outside is grey, gloomy and cold, and all I really want to do is curl up with a warm blanket around me, drinking some hot chocolate and binge watching a few TV shows until it gets a little warmer and brighter outside. Even though I have loads of projects and videos planned for the year and beyond, I realised I needed something to get me motivated, a project that I can build on as we go through the year. I came up with the idea of a 12-month project where each month I'll share a quote with a positive message behind it. I'll be using the files as decals, but I'll also show how they can be edited in Affinity 3, Silhouette Studio or Cricut Design Space, which are all free to download, so they can also be used as print files. I'm using mine in a sewing project, creating a patchwork panel that I will sew together at the end. So to help plan that out, I'm starting with a digital mock-up. So let's get started. I like to lay out projects either on paper or digitally, so I've created a mock-up in Silhouette Studio. You can use any software that can create squares or a table, but I'm using Silhouette Studio to create the SVG files and cut out my decals, so it was just quicker and easier for me to do it all in one place. I've made use of the replicating tool to quickly mock up my panel, which has 24 squares in total, so 6 across and 4 down. And I've colour filled them in black and white to match the fabric colours I'll be using. I've grouped together all the black squares, so if I want to change them quickly and easily to a different colour, then it's just a click of the mouse, and I've done the same with the white. I find this helps me to visualise what I'm creating, and then when I come to put the final panel together, it can help me to organise and lay out the decals. I'm not necessarily going to be using them in the order as I create them each month. The quotes will be going on to the black squares, but I'm not sure what I'm going to put on the white ones yet, but I have all year to decide. The first decal is "Stop doubting, start doing." Some simple words, but with an important message behind them. Far too often we put something off because we doubt ourselves and our abilities, and we never get started. But usually once we do get going, we wonder what on earth we were worrying about in the first place, and everything turns out fine. For my black panels, I'm using a canvas weight fabric, which is heavier than regular cotton. I've pre-washed my fabric for a couple of reasons. Cotton can shrink, and if I ever need to wash the finished project, that shrinkage could distort any HTV that's been applied. Dark colours can also bleed, so I used a colour catcher in the wash. And I have found with some lighter heat transfer vinyl, like the one I'm going to be using today, colour from the fabric can sometimes bleed through when heat is applied, which can obviously ruin your project. I always go over the area I'll be applying the HTV to with a lint roller, as you really don't want any fluff or little fibres underneath the vinyl, which can affect how well the HTV adheres. With many lint rollers they have the handle on the side, but I prefer this style with the handle at the bottom, as I find it's more of a natural movement as I roll it, especially when working on a flat surface. And you can use regular replacement rollers with this, that usually come in a pack of 3 or 5, which can be bought from various places. My finished squares are going to be 6 inches, but I need to include a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around, so I'll be cutting out 6.5 by 6.5 inch squares. I have a 6-inch quilt ruler, and it includes a 1/4 inch seam allowance along each edge, so it makes it ideal for this project. I'm not going to cut out individual panels just yet for this project. I'm going to do it all at the end, as I don't want the edges to fray or panels to get lost, as I know they will. So instead I'm going to mark on the fabric, and today I'm using a chalk fabric marking pencil to draw around the outside edge of the ruler. If you don't have a fabric marker, a regular piece of chalk works just as well, and if you have a pencil sharpener with a larger hole, you can sharpen the chalk to get a nice fine point. I couldn't find mine today, typically, but if I do, I'll show it in a future video. Of course, chalk won't necessarily last, so what I'll also probably be doing is adding a basting box over the chalk markings, and I'll either do that by hand or on the sewing machine. I can also use the ruler to mark out the 6 by 6 inch square inside the 6.5 inch, and this will help me when I go to line up my decal. I don't know why I turned the ruler then, because it's a square and it's the same all the way around. But we can do it on all four edges. And this will just help us as a bit of a guide. And I can also mark those centre points too. If you don't have a ruler, then you could cut a piece of card to size and add the markings to it so you can reuse it each time. Or you can, like I often do, find something around the house, and a 6-inch ceramic tile will work great in this case. And again, you can use it to go round, and you could use another ruler to add on the 1/4 inch seam allowance or anything else that you have that may be a 1/4 inch wide, and then we can just place our decal into the middle of that. Today I'm using my small Cricut Easy Press, which has a 6x7-inch pressing plate, so ideal for decals this size, but it's not essential, and in some future videos I'll also use a regular iron. And I also have a couple of pressing pads. We have the original Cricut one and one by Real Light. As you can see, they're both very well used and a little grubby, but that doesn't affect them at all in any way. I do prefer the Real Light one as it's slightly thicker and not quite so floppy, but you can also use a folded towel or sheet underneath. So I'll take the Real Light pad and I'm going to pop it underneath my fabric where I'm going to be pressing my decal onto, and I've already pre-pressed the area where I'll be adding the decal to remove any creases and any moisture that might be in the fabric, as that can affect how well the decal adheres to it. I've already weeded my decal and I've trimmed around it as I was cutting out some other things at the same time. I could have added some registration marks when cutting, but that can sometimes waste vinyl, so instead we can fold it over and make a couple of snips, just cutting through the transfer tape. So I'll put one in the bottom centre, fold it over at the edge, and we can do the same by bringing the top down to the bottom and lining up the letters and adding a snip in the side. Now I can line up the bottom snip with the chalk mark at the centre of the bottom edge and the side snip with the side marking. The heat transfer vinyl I'm using is Rainbow White from HDV Ront that I bought off Amazon, and I'm going to use this for all my decals in this project. I set my heat press to the required temperature and pressing time, so that's all ready to go. Because this is a small simple decal, I don't need to add any heat tape. I can just place the press on top of it, apply some light pressure, and of course I can hit that button to start the countdown timer. But I do often forget, because I find if I use an iron I just count in my head, so I automatically do the same thing here. This heat transfer vinyl is a cold peel, so it's important to let it cool down before removing the carrier sheet. You don't want to peel it too early because that can stretch and damage the vinyl, which you really obviously don't want to do. And that's one of the reasons why I'm not doing this on a completed patchwork panel, because if I do mess it up at any stage, then I haven't ruined the whole panel. I can easily just recut another decal and press it onto another section of fabric. So I make sure that I leave it to cool down completely. It'll take a couple of minutes before I look to peel away the carrier sheet. I left it for a few minutes, so it's now cooled completely, and I can gently peel back the carrier sheet. I always do this slowly, just in case there is a spot that needs a few extra seconds of heat. If there is, you can just lay the carrier back down and give another short press, but then make sure you leave it to cool again. And that's peeled away nice and cleanly. You can then give it a final press if you like, but never apply heat directly to the vinyl. Use a pressing cloth or Teflon sheet, or press from the back of the fabric, because otherwise it will melt. If you'd like the file, you can download it for free from my Ko-fi page. The link is in the description below, and it includes both an SVG file and a Silhouette Studio version. Be sure to check back next month for another decal in this series, and I'll include a few more tips and tricks. If you'd like to be notified when new videos go live, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell.